Hey, I'm glad you're here. This has been a really crazy week for everybody, adjusting to the new normal of social distancing and the fallout from the social isolation. A lot of people out there right now are dealing with fear and uncertainty and not really knowing how this is going to end or what it's going to mean for us. So I encourage you to take heart. In today's episode, we talk about our fear, coming up with a good way to manage your fear and the importance of that. And toward the end of the episode, we talk about love and unity and the common goal of working together so that we can return to a place of love and get through this together. Hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Deepening Place. I'm Angela Abide here with Turk.
How's it going, everybody?
Jai, how are you today?
I'm feeling all right. How about you?
I'm good. I'm a little discombobulated in a way, just with the uncertainty everywhere. How about you?
The more I'm around town, the more I realize the effects that it's having. Not so much the actual virus, but the news on people.
Yeah.
And I'm still freaked out by the grocery stores. I do not understand the toilet paper thing.
Yeah. Are you set up? Were you able to find some?
Luckily, I have a normal amount at home, which is like a
Yeah.
week or so or two.
Yeah. I feel sorry for the people that can't find any.
It's insane.
Yeah, it is crazy. So we're recording this on March the 16th, Monday. So far, everything's a little bit voluntary, don't you think? And the social distancing, and we haven't, in Austin, Texas at least, we haven't closed restaurants.
Definitely voluntary still. Definitely voluntary.
I wouldn't be surprised if in the next couple of days it becomes mandatory. What do you think?
Neither would I, based on the stories I'm hearing from people in other places around the world. I was
Yeah.
talking to some people from Australia earlier, and the last flight in and out of Australia is like this Wednesday until May or
Wow.
something like that. The same for my friend in Czech Republic. Everyone's, I don't know if quarantine is the right word, but they're on a lockdown. They can't leave their residence.
So do they have like one person can go get groceries, or how are they working that out?
The city, particularly in Prague, they gave them time, like a day or two's warning, and everyone could go to and I think there's an exception for like the pharmacy, but other than that, she's on lockdown for like a week or two.
Wow. I noticed last week with my clients, it was kind of a weird thing. Either people were completely oblivious, like they just kept going through their stuff like nothing was going on, or they couldn't even focus on like maybe what was going on in their individual lives because of that uncertainty in our world. Interesting to see people's reactions.
It has been, yeah, and is and will be.
You had mentioned right before we got on this call here that it might be good for us to talk about fear and maybe even control. Did you want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, a lot of people seem to be very afraid of the actual COVID-19 itself, which doesn't make too much sense if you kind of look it up. And I'm not saying that to be like you shouldn't do whatever, but that was my own form of control over my fear. It was just look up the reality of what's happening kind of like on the larger landscape. And it's bad, it's not good for older people or the immunocompromised to get, but it's not killing a lot of people. And so the fear seems really important to quell so we don't keep doing things like irrationally buying stuff and sort of making an imbalance where it's unnecessary. And I guess that ties into control. I just mentioned that because it seems like, I don't know, it seems to be a lack of control. Seems to be a lack of control, and not like a government sort of lockdown or whatever you want to call it, but of people in their own mindset. Kind of like you were saying, some people were so distraught by it that they couldn't focus on their day to day, or possibly so distraught that they focus or they completely ignore it at all. I don't know, fear and control seem to be really apparent in that play right now. And for myself, it's been a lot of like research so I can kind of control my own fear. Like the Federal Reserve dropped to a 0% rate. I had no idea what any of that meant at all. I was like, I don't know what that means. What the hell is that? What is the Federal Reserve? What is 0%? So, and I'm just talking like 3 hours ago. I was reading that stuff this morning when I woke up and saw it. Does that make any sense? Right now, it feels like a big discombobulation of thought.
I like what you said about your form of control of your fear is to educate yourself and to try to find out some information and to try to find out what it means when the Fed does something like that, or to reach out to some friends that you know that might be a little bit ahead of us and see what they're going through. And the point that I love about that is that you're working to control your fear. And I think that's kind of your underlying point, that when people don't work to control their fear, they start acting crazy and they lose control and they act irrationally. Is that kind of what you were saying?
Dude, yes, Angela, thank you for summarizing that. That's exactly it. Yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly it.
It's interesting because I kind of had the same thoughts last week. As far as an illness, it's not scary in the sense that if you get it, you're going to die. And throughout history, we've had those that your likelihood of death is really high if you get the illness. From what we can hear and understand, it might not be fun or pleasant, but a lot of people survive. Most people will survive if they get it. So that made me feel a little better. Making a list and getting some basic supplies for my household, that made me feel better. And another thing that I'm recommending to all of my clients and everybody is to control the intake of mainstream media because it's ridiculous what's going on there in the mainstream media. I don't know if you've had any experience with that.
I do not turn it on for
Yeah.
events like this. Absolutely not.
It's interesting to me how it's being very much politicized, and you still have the people on the left that can't admit anything good or positive, and then you have the people on the right who can't admit that, there might be a hole in the program or whatever. So it's continuing what has been going on in mainstream media for forever. It's the good versus the bad. And I'm not sure that that's really helpful in a situation like this. It really affects our ability to be united. And I was thinking about this of all this story is as old as time. In superhero movies and archetypal imagery, where we put aside our beef so that we can address a common enemy.
Yes.
And I feel like the greatest thing that we can do right now is work to be united within our heart, within our family, with our neighbors, with our communities. Just look out for each other and try to, as you said, manage your fear. Do what you can to manage your fear.
You made a powerful point. The duality in all of this still is apparent. And I was actually looking forward to that breaking down, which is why I think it can't turn on any news because it's so biased here. But I was looking forward to something like this bringing. It's kind of horrible, but in tough times, normally that's when people come together. And I don't know what's up here. I don't know what's up. And there's a fear I can't control, and it's a fear that this country may be too far gone to be able to unionize and come together. Maybe it never really was together, and like the South and the North never really went away, sort of thing,
Yeah.
in some way or another. I don't know what it is, but something like this, it doesn't seem like the people I talk to in the rest of the world are having these sort of petty arguments around something like this. It's very disheartening.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It does seem like an awesome opportunity for us to work together and, be proud to be Americans or to work hard for something in a united way. But it doesn't seem like we're going to get there. There's so much mistrust. And really, what's going on right now is like an exacerbation of the symptoms that are already here. We're so sick with our division that even though this is a big, scary thing that would normally cause people to put away their differences, I believe that we're just so far out on the extremes that it's really difficult for us to put that aside. I've thought that this might be a great opportunity to. I just wanted to talk about something that I've learned in my personal life about fear. And one thing that I was noticing last week is I'm not usually a fearful person, but I started to feel that growing anxiety in my body. And when I really sat with it and tried to discern where it was coming from, it's fear of fear. It's exactly what you were saying. I am starting to become fearful of people's fear because I know what fear does and can do. And so if I had any influence over anyone, I would say what you started off with, find a form of control for your fear. And that's how you can be beneficial and useful and really help the world right now is to find a control for your fear.
And, the first thing that makes me think of is I saw a post on Facebook about someone was going to grab a bunch of food, and there was an homage to, I guess, the Great Depression and was whatever their family went through at that time, or some people they knew at that time, having to stock up on food. And I think, well, my experience so far with the Corona thing has been very grounding. Like, man, what do we really practically need right now? Food. Food is number one. For me, some of that lack of control and fear is like, what, if some people are really freaking out about food or supplies, particularly food, I don't feel like I have enough control or even power to give them that. When I moved to Austin, or I forget when, I was really curious about where did all food go? Where are the fruit trees? Where, like, if something really did just break down and we couldn't go to stores, where can we go to actually get food? And I think a lot of that is becoming present now. People are kind of aware that not necessarily food, but a lot of resources are sort of public access. We call it private, but it's really public access. And I think a lot of it comes from that. Perhaps I think that polarization you were talking about, maybe that comes from the giving up of control, sort of. But for people that haven't really addressed that or haven't reached that level of, I guess, inner governance, having
Mhm.
given up that control to live in the society we're fortunate to live in now, I guess it's kind of coming back to bite us or bite some people. And I think that's where some of that fear is coming from. Like, oh crap, I can't really sustain for myself right now. And I don't really have an answer for that. I can't really, do much to control that in this moment. And I think that's coming back to, like you were just saying, that's my fear of other people's fear. But I think that's where it's
So,
really rooted.
are you saying that you're empathizing with these people who realize that they don't know how to care for themselves and that they've been completely dependent on someone else to do that?
Not so much dependent on someone else, but in like not so much dependent on someone else, but kind of how we're all interdependent on each other. And I think there's a level of, even for me, like not wanting to admit that sometimes. This place is very much about freedom and independence. I think some of that fear is that we're not so super free and not so incredibly independent. We actually do need each other, and we need to live in balance and harmony. I think right now some of this fear is coming from that realization. I'm not an island. I do need other people. I shouldn't go to the store and buy up an entire aisle of paper towels, but I need to because I got to protect myself. I don't know. As we go through this conversation right now, I'm kind of the dichotomy is starting to become more apparent outside of red and blue. It's sort of like independence versus community once again.
Yeah, and striking the balance between the two.
Yeah, striking the balance. I think people are really afraid of finding what that is, or they don't have them, or we, I shouldn't say they, we don't have the full means of like controlling that balance right now.
Yeah. I think one thing that is a really common therapy tool and something I've been trying to help people see is that we do have the ability to reframe things. And so even when you're faced with something that's not necessarily positive, you can reframe it in a way that changes your perspective. And we talk a lot about perspective. And one of my friends on Facebook, I thought, did a really beautiful example of this. She wrote that she and her family were going to stay home. It was just their personal choice. She said, I'm excited to get some yard projects done, exercise, do some baking that I've been wanting to do, clean out my closet. Her message was that instead of focusing on what's missing, she's going to be grateful for some dedicated family time and the opportunity to get some things done that she normally wouldn't be able to do. That's a wonderful example of reframing.
Yeah, it is.
One thing that I would mention, though, is in that particular case, this lady has older children and she works in a school, so she will not be working. And I just want to point this out because there are people for whom this is not possible. Reframing is not possible. In fact, it's probably a lot worse for them right now because not only do they have to do their online work and they're expected to meet the same deadlines, but maybe they also have young children that they're caring for. And so instead of, looking forward to a time where they have more time to get a few little things done, it's become a big nightmare and they don't have enough strength, energy, time to do everything that they have to do. So for those people it would be more difficult to reframe it in that way.
Hmm. Yeah, and I see a lot of posts about that in my network. There's a lot of parents with kids that'll be at home, and particularly in some of the parent groups I'm a part of on Facebook, just because of the work I do with kids and families. You have a lot of questions about like food and a lot of real fears. Yeah, there's a lot of real fears. But it's almost always an asterisk, almost always, that you still can reframe. And I've been thinking about how am I going to help? Let's say this thing really does extend like another month or two in the way that it is. Like, what would I give families that, are going to have kids that are going to have their kids at home for like 2 months and just aren't used to that and really just don't have the capacity to deal with it? How can I help them virtually? And that's where my brain has been. And I do think it's on people like us to sort of put people in a place to where they can reframe. I think there is some assistance needed. So for me, that means not all hope is lost. I got, for a second, I really was stuck on the man. Some people are really afraid because they don't have anything. But there's people out there to help. So for anyone listening, and I'm personally doing it, so I'd say go find someone you can help in that sort of way, because some people do need help reframing. They need to be put into a place where they can. That's really important right now.
Yeah, I think that's a great call to action. And I've seen a lot of pastors and other mental health professionals saying, hey, we're going to have a live meeting. Anybody that needs support. One person I follow is really big into recovery, Laura McCowan. She said, I know that a lot of you can't get to your AA meetings. We're going to hold the space online. Please sign up. So, to your point, there's a lot of helpers out there. Another person I follow and a mentor of mine, Josh Harris, said, there's a quote from Mr. Rogers about when he was young, his mother would told him to always look for the helpers. And Josh was saying that he wants to be counted among the helpers when this is all over. And that was very inspiring to me. And it sounds like you feel the exact same way. You want to figure out a way that you can help and not contribute to the panic and fear.
Yes, yes. Find some way to alleviate.
Yeah. Even if you're not a professional, or if you're not a pastor, or if you're not a rehab person, just checking in on your friends, just calling in, making a FaceTime call to somebody, talking to their kids, telling them a joke, offering encouragement. I think those are ways that, individuals could help. If you have a little extra and you know that there's somebody who's really suffering, even dropping off something on their doorstep, you don't even have to come into contact with them. Just try to get creative about ways to help and stay calm. That's my whole emphasis on what I do is love and the love revolution and meet me in the middle. And where that came from is I started to realize that I always thought it was a duality, like the opposite of love is not hate, it's fear. And so I went on that for years and years and years. So I tried really hard not to be afraid because that was the opposite of love. But what I've started to realize is that most everything is on like a continuum. And so the extreme on one side is fear, and the extreme on the other side is judgment. And in the middle, if I can hold the space between fear or chaos and judgment, which is that rigid structure, the panic of buying and hoarding, if I can hold the space between chaos and order, in the middle is love. When I start, this is exactly what you kind of described earlier. You start to feel the fear. So, to protect yourself from going off the deep end into chaos, you go over toward the order side. And the way we can go too far with order is that judgment and the structure and hoarding things. And the way we go too far over on the fear side is to get chaotic and start spinning out of control. We can hold the tension between those two extremes. It brings us to the center, which is love, so that we can be well informed and we can be clear minded, and that we can offer ourselves as a gift to those around us. And does that make sense? The extremes, as opposed to like love being the opposite of fear, it's actually kind of in the middle of fear and judgment. Can you?
I can relate to that, yeah. Because when you first started saying it, I was like, oh, I don't know if fear is the opposite of love. Because that's how I relate to fear and love. I think sometimes love even feels like almost in duality. I guess that's a good way to put it. That it's in between fear and judgment. To not fear and to not judge is to love. Mm,
Yeah,
yeah, that's great. To not fear and to not judge.
if you look at it like a pendulum, like fear is on that one side and judgment is on the other. So chaos is on one side and order, extreme order, is on the other. And so if things get too chaotic, people naturally want to cling toward to order.
Yeah.
And if things get too orderly or structured, then people want to break free and kind of go more chaotic. And so we keep doing that swinging between the two extremes. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in the media right now, depending on what side politically you're on. And so if we can find a place in the middle to make our home, then we're going to weather the storm and also be a blessing to other people.
I think that's a great message. Is it the way you frame it with that pendulum is that love is sort of permanent. It's not really optional, and it's there, and it's just about how we use it as a guide. Really, I love that. That's a really awesome perspective.
Also, too, I say a lot on social media, meet me in the middle. We've
Hmm.
said that before, but that's exactly what I mean. The more people we can get to take one step or two steps or three steps toward the middle, toward that place of solid love, then that swinging pendulum is not even possible anymore because the distribution of weight is most people are in the middle and feel calm and confident and they're caring about each other. I think that would be a great goal for us.
That'd be a very cool visual as well. I'm imagining like the little pendulums, but I don't know how it would look or what it would be. But I've never heard it phrased that way. That one day the pendulum might not be possible because everyone's sort of grounded in the middle. That's some
Yeah.
fifth dimensional thinking. Hmm.
Well, I guess I should give credit to where credit is due. So I have to give credit to Jesus. So at one point in my life, I was just ready to kind of walk away and pretty much did. But I couldn't get the words of Christ out of my mind because everywhere else I went, it was the same words. I think we've talked about this before too. And so walking away for a minute made me realize that, wait, maybe it's not the message of Christ that I have a problem with. Maybe it's all the fluff and stuff that surrounds it. So
Yeah.
when I went back in to kind of say, okay, I'm just going to take the essence of what I think Christ was trying to say, and I'm going to walk with that for a while. And then when I get done with that, I'm going to come back and try and get something else. So I was just going to take it step by step and see. The first thing that I came up with is love, don't fear, and don't judge. And those are the things that was the main message. Love, don't fear, don't judge. And so for a while, I thought of that as three things that Christ said: love, don't fear, don't judge. And I was going to try to work that. And then one day I realized don't fear and don't judge are the definition. It's like love, colon, don't fear, comma, don't judge. And that was the fifth dimension, as you said. Once I realized that, I'm like, wow. I feel like until I get that one down, I don't really need to even go back. I'm going to work
Mm.
on that one maybe for the rest of my life. Not fearing, not judging, and trying to hold the space, hold that tension so that I can stay and grounded in the middle and love people, love myself, love my enemy, love my neighbor. I could work on that for the rest of my life.
Yeah. How would you feel about next episode? We sort of start there.
That'd be great.
I think we can start really talking about some tools because then you can. I'm hearing the opposite of fear and judgment is like instead of fearing something, question it or explore. Or instead of judging something, try to understand it. I would think
Yeah.
those are like the actions of love. Kind of what we started with today. Kind of how to get out of fear and kind of focus on control.
And we've
Mm,
talked about so many times considering another's perspective. And so if I'm fearful of someone, learning their perspective helps me to love them. If I'm judgmental of someone, understanding their story, understanding their perspective helps me to love them instead of judge them. So yeah, that'd be a great place to start.
cool. Awesome.
All right, well, stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you next time.
You too. Keep your toilet paper up.
Okay,
All right.
bye.
Bye bye.